Welcome to the LeaderCast podcast, a weekly deep dive into the stories that transformed our guests into leaders worth following. I'm your host, Joe Boyd. If you've been enjoying the podcast, thank you so much for being a listener. One simple thing you can do to help us out is give a review wherever you listen. Today's guest is Tricia Sciortino. She is the CEO of Belay Solutions, a company that comes alongside businesses and leaders to help them make their lives easier. You're going to learn a lot today, but the most important thing I think she talks about is the third option, and a lot of us have been there when we have very important things in our personal life, very important things in our business life. How do we manage that third one? Tricia Sciortino, welcome to the LeaderCast podcast. We are very excited to have you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I'm excited to learn a little bit more about Belay and your company. So could you, for now, just to get started, kind of tell us an overview of what your role is, what you do, what Belay does, and then maybe we'll back up and hear just a little bit more of your own leadership journey.
Yeah, so I am the CEO of Belay, which is a virtual staffing organization. We specialize in staffing virtual assistants, accounting services, and social media management to leaders who are looking to offload administrative support so they can reduce some of their overwhelm. I'm the CEO. I've been here since founding of the organization. We founded back in 2010, and it's been an amazing ride.
Yeah. And you did not start as CEO, correct?
I did not. I actually started as the first virtual assistant 12 years ago, and my journey is just kind of rising through the ranks of the organization through hyper growth and walking through different layers of leadership and management over the years, going from a manager to a director, vice president, president, COO for a while, and then CEO January 1st, 2020.
It's super impressive. I think that's kind of an old-fashioned American story to climbing
the ladder,
right.
Literally.
Reminds me of my dad a little. He started when he was 19 years old, pumping gas back when you had to do that with an attendant, and worked himself up to the VP of the oil company. But yeah, that's a story of it takes some dedication and grit and loyalty to get there. So congratulations.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love to just think about people's stories as sort of a great novel or movie unfolding as we go. So I like to go back to the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit, what kind of a kid were you? Were you the adventurous kid, the quiet kid? I'm interested what those early memories, those early sort of, fascinations were when you were running around as a little girl.
Yeah, actually, most people would find this surprising. I was a quiet kid.
Yeah.
I was quiet yet adventurous. So I loved, back when I was a kid, right, you would leave the house when you woke up and you wouldn't come back home till the streetlights came on.
Yeah.
I was that kind of kid, just roaming free. I loved to just be out and about and doing and moving. But I was also very quiet. I was definitely not the voice in the room.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic that people would not say that of me today.
Would you say you're an extrovert or an introvert now?
I would say I'm both.
Yeah.
I'm
omnivert or whatever.
Ambivert, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are. I love being around people, and I'm extroverted, but for periods of time, and then I really need to kind of spend some time by myself and regroup and settle myself. So I do value my alone, quiet time.
Yeah.
But I also, when I'm in the room, I enjoy it and it excites me.
Yeah, I get it. I'm an introvert who's always had extrovert jobs. Always, I was a teaching pastor and then a professional actor and a comedian and all sorts of stuff. And people are shocked. But I'm like, no, I just like to be on stage because I'm in control. I can say what I want. But I get shy one-on-one sometimes. So were you a career-minded, as you were going through school, a career-minded person? Did you kind of envision what your career might be as you were growing up, what you might want to do?
Yeah, no. I think that I was very unsure what I wanted to do. When I went away to college, I kind of just chose business and marketing as my major because that's what my dad advised me to. And my dad is probably my first mentor.
Yeah.
And So I took business and I got my degree in business. And even after I graduated, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. So it's almost very haphazardly. I actually feel like very God guided to where it is that I wound up today. I could see looking back how it is that I wound up where I am today, having no idea when I was 21 what I wanted to do.
Was Belay, was it your first kind of real job, or did you have other stuff before that?
I had another job before this in
Yeah.
retail management,
Okay.
and that's where my leadership career started, and probably where I had my first kind of mentors. Is graduated from college, really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in New York City for an advertising agency because I grew up in New York,
Yeah.
and those are hard jobs to find.
Yeah.
And so while I was looking for that job, I took a part-time job to earn some money working at Pacific Sunwear, PacSun in the mall.
Yeah.
And it was really just to keep me busy when I wasn't interviewing and trying to find my real job. That job turned into the first part of my career. So when I was at Pacific Sunwear, my store manager there really saw something in me, and I wound up becoming a manager, then a store manager, then a district manager, and that's kind of where my leadership journey began at PacSun. I wound up staying there for 12 years, and by the time I left there, I was, leading the number one district in the company.
Wow.
So that was my.
There's a climbing the ladder pattern in your life. I see.
There
like
is. Yeah, there very much is. There very much is.
Yeah. So you talked about mentors. So in that first run, the first ladder as you're climbing, who were the folks that came alongside of you? What lessons did you need to learn to become the leader you are?
Yeah, that was a fascinating time. I was very young. I had my first store manager. Her name was Gina. And she really believed in me, and she kind of took me under her wing and showed me the way. And she really advocated for me to her boss at the time that I had potential. And so she really encouraged me. And she was the one that really made me decide, I'm going to stay here and see where this will take me, because I feel like I'm supported, I'm encouraged. There's opportunity for me here at the time. Pacific Sunwear, this is back in the 90s. Oh my God, I'm dating myself. But, it was a thriving organization. They were opening new stores all the time. They were in hyper growth mode back then. So there was a lot of opportunity. So she really saw something in me, and I stayed there and stuck with it. And now the lessons I learned over the years is, once I became a store manager, I got to the place where I realized I was kind of a jerk. I was like 23. I was like, my ego was way bigger than it should have been at the time. I was running one of their top stores. I definitely, ego got in my way. And it took me many, many years after the fact here at Belay to realize, I kind of was not a great leader back then. I was young and power hungry, and I didn't really. I needed to flex a lot of different muscles, which I've learned now.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a different leader now than I was back then.
As you lead now, do you encounter younger leaders that remind you of that part of you? As you lead
not so much,
Yeah.
I think, we were so in tune with it at Belay that I think it's something we look for. And there's something to be said. I almost see the opposite more. I see
Really?
more people who have imposter syndrome and lack self-confidence today than I feel like I saw, 20 years ago.
Well, let's talk. You use a phrase, is it third option? Yes.
Third option.
Which I found really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and for Belay, and what is the third option?
Yeah. So the third option is really finding that fit for you that is the in between on, as a mom, working full time and be a career person versus being a parent. And so I really came to these crossroads. I was working for Pacific Sunwear, district manager, a lot of travel, a lot of hours, and I had my daughter. And I kind of came to this crossroads, this intersection in my life where I said, gosh, I want to be her mom, but I love my job. How am I going to do both of these things? But I don't want to sacrifice one for the other. So I wound up leaving Pacific Sunwear. And that's where I found Belay, the founders of Belay, and started working with them. And we created this organization where we're like, well, we can work remotely. We can create this organization where there's a lot of flexibility. You can work from home. You can be available to your children as they're young and needed. And you could also have a great, thriving career. And I could still climb that ladder, if you will, here at Belay, and wasn't missing being present at home. So it was a great kind of the third option, because it was very hard to find those things 12 years ago when remote work was very few and far between. It wasn't the standard normal way with companies work. So it was a unique gem at the time.
Yeah. I always struggle. I want to take the conversation two different ways. So hopefully I can remind me to come back to remote work if I don't. But okay. But I'm curious, it feels to me like you were searching for a third option for you, and that became sort of a passion for you, I would assume, for others. And it seems like Belay itself as an organization can help folks find that third option. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, all of the contractors we work with, all of our virtual assistants and our bookkeepers and accounting clerks and the people that work with us are the people that are looking for what I found. They were looking for something that was flexible. They could work from home. They can be present. They could have a rewarding, purposeful job and do great work, and also do it fractionally, part-time or full-time, and do it from home. And really kind of make and set your own hours and be flexible about, I have to, take my child to the dentist at 10 in the morning. Yeah. And that's okay when you can do those things if you were in an office.
And it strikes me that even the folks you're serving can also free up their time as well, right?
I mean, ideally, our clients come to us because they are inundated with work. They're probably working too many hours. They're buried in inboxes. They're booking their own travel. They're scheduling their own meetings. They're trying to lead their businesses. They're doing their own books, their accounting and expensing, and they have very, very little time for themselves. And either it's creeping into their work, into their life, and they're working longer hours and nights and weekends, or they're dropping balls and they're missing things. And so really we come alongside them and say, let us take the burden off a lot of that. Let us take care of the administrative part of your job and what you do, so that you can really focus on the important things and find great work-life balance, and we'll be the experts in the administrative part, and you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're doing is I almost said recovering, but an entrepreneur that just keeps habitually starting things and launching new things. So many of us, in theory, have so much fun at our work that we can overcommit, overdo it, and it's almost sometimes, in my own story, you get to almost like a crisis point and you realize it hasn't felt like I've been a workaholic or doing too much, but I think I have been. And so having a place, be great. Having an organization that you can connect to if you're an employee like Belay, I think way more of our organizations would be more served to think that way and to help, even on the ROI side, which I know is very not people-centered to think about for a second, but if our organizations helped our employees have more of a work-life balance, we would retain them longer and they would be happier and they would do better work.
There's so many, ROI factors on both sides of the equation. Happy employees want to give you the best of them. And when they're not burnt out and overworked, you get the best of them. And they want to. People who enjoy showing up to work usually give you their best work. Yep. And so you're really maximizing the performance of your team by giving them the flexibility and the joy. And they're happy to show up to work on Monday morning because it's a good environment. Yeah. On the flip side, as the leader, it's really nice to not feel burnt out. It's really nice to, kind of close the laptop at 5:00 and, be with your family and have dinner, or go out with friends and have a separate part of your life. I, like you, would say the same thing. I'm a recovering workaholic. There are many, many years where I worked too much, and I did it because nobody told me I needed to. I did it because I loved it. Yeah, right. I love it. I mean, today, I love my job. It would be very easy for me to overwork, but I'm very... I very much want to keep my boundaries because I don't want to look back on these years and think, gosh, I missed opportunities with my kids because I worked too much, and I don't want to have regret. So I keep very, very strict boundaries about my time because I could easily keep working because I love it so much.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, back to remote working. I didn't want to forget.
Remote work.
So you've been doing that for a long time, and then a thing happened in March of 2020, and the whole world went remote, and we are still now, I would assume forever, in a hybrid world. Our company went from office-based to hybrid out of the pandemic. And I know for me, sometimes I was always the sort of leader that would like to lead by just kind of wandering around the office and checking in on people. And so I've had to think differently about what that looks like in a remote world. I'm curious, as you lived through the pandemic and the whole world going remote, what lessons did you feel like you had already learned from working that way before, and also maybe any adjustments to your thinking about how a remote office can work well?
Yeah, it was certainly a time. For us, because we were a virtual organization, our day to day didn't really change at Belay because we were already 100% remote, no office. So the general functions we had already figured out. We were already on Zoom.
Yeah.
The whole world went on Zoom. We were already on Zoom.
Right.
We had already figured out, we already knew things like Zoom. We already knew things about, how to foster connection with a team that you're not in person with. And that's things like, whether you use Slack as a tool where you can stay in front of people, where you have special Zoom online engagement where, so we would do virtual scavenger hunts and virtual would you rather on Zoom. I mean, we figured out how to integrate culture into remote life. So that for us was great. The best opportunity we had during that time was that we really got to teach so many other people what we had learned. And it was great to just help a lot of organizations who were doing it for the first time by just giving them tips and tools like those couple things. You got to get on Zoom, you got to get on cameras, you got to turn the camera on, you got to figure out how you integrate your core values in there. Like we have a core value of fun. And so it's like, okay, how does fun look like on Zoom? And so it is things like scavenger hunts and games on remote games, which now are everywhere. So that was important. It was great to just share that with so many other people. And then honestly, what we did used to be so unheard of that, and all of a sudden that wasn't the case anymore, that we would have prospects or people who were interested in hiring a virtual assistant. And one of their biggest obstacles or to overcome was, well, gosh, I don't think I want someone virtual. I think they have to be in the office with me. And so we're not going to choose that route. Well, that conversation changed dramatically. And now, now everybody was like, well, I mean, I might want them in the office, but I'm going to have to figure out how to work with somebody who's not in the office. And so we've seen a lot of, the remote acumen really grow over the last 2 years, 3 years now.
As a correspondent, have you seen growth in your business as well coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fortunately for us, we were one of the organizations that, thrived out of the pandemic because there was just such a need for staff that knew how to work remote and how we could supplement people and how we could bring them on the journey of moving from in-office to remote. So we, 2022 was a good year for Belay. 2020, sorry.
I think I think a lot of us had some technical learnings to do that we figured out by the end of 2020, most of us, around Zoom and all sorts of things. Turning our mics on, although you never have a meeting where you say, Brian, you're on mute. Like that's just always going to happen.
Always.
But we most of us figured that stuff out. But I do think the culture part is the part that people are really still struggling with. You gave fun as an example, but when you think about your other values as a remote company, are there other things you're doing to help kind of communicate your values in a remote world where you can't do, say, like a team lunch you can virtually, but there are certain things I would always rely on. If I felt like we were slipping, we'll all get together. We'll do a staff day or whatever. What sorts of things are you doing remotely to help those other values be lifted up?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is typically you see gaps when there's disconnects in communication. Like communication gaps cause odd tensions and maybe lack of trust um, and all the things that start creeping into what feels like we're not in alignment. And so we have those seasons all the time, even though we feel like we know how to do this. And then the first thing we do, just to your point, is more the frequency of the communication must increase. And so that can be a couple different things. So we've created over the years, especially as we grow. I mean, when you add even more people, never mind anything else, you add more people to the mix, is more people to communicate with. So we have a very kind of regimented communication strategy, which I think it would be the first thing I would recommend to anybody who felt like the remote thing feels disconnected. And the communication strategy could be things like we have Monday morning stand-up meetings for every single department. Every single team on a Monday morning is on Zoom and they're doing stand-up for the week. We have Tuesday all team meetings. The entire company is getting on meetings, and I'm giving a kind of state of the union. Those are places where we integrate fun, and maybe we'll do a little game and honor one of our core values. We also make sure that our leadership team we focus a lot on cohesion and alignment of the leadership team, because if there's breakdowns up top, it's certainly going to trickle down into the organization. So we spend a lot of time together as a leadership team and an executive team weekly, twice a week. I mean, I meet with my executives twice a week on Zoom, and we have tactical agendas and strategic agendas. So we just have a very robust regiment of time we plan to be in front of somebody on Zoom specifically. Now with that, we do have the opportunity, because our team is remote but also in the same city in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We do get the team together in person quarterly, and those days are really great cup fillers for everybody's souls.
Yeah, right.
And they do really help us.
Good. Well, there's still something to being in the room, right? Like there is
Yes,
a different dynamic for
there
sure.
is still something to being in
Yeah.
the room. And I think even large organizations, the Coca-Colas of the world, I mean, most companies, even at large size and you're dispersed throughout the country, will have an annual something, right? They'll have an annual whatever that is, where they bring their whole team in. I think that those things are important regardless of how scattered you are.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate you being here. I would love just before we conclude, anything else you'd like to say about Belay? I'm actually curious how the name came to be. Maybe you could tell us that. And anything else about the organization that folks should know about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so belay is a rock climbing term. When you belay somebody, you're helping them, and you're a belayer, you're helping them climb a mountain. So we are here to help our clients climb higher. Belay, and even using the rock climbing reference, was because our founder, Brian Miles, was a rock climber, and that was just something that he loved. So we kind of, that is where that term came from. So, and that's kind of how we really see ourselves, is we are the ones that are helping others climb by being their belayers. So that is where belay came from.
I love that. We talk a lot about the best leaders find a way to make themselves not the hero of their story, and to be more of the mentor. And I can very much see that in what you do. That you're the support. You're not
Right.
You're not the hero of your own story, which is pretty great.
The client is the hero.
Yeah.
The VA is the hero. We are literally the support system, helping them find their third option, find their work-life balance, grow their business. We're the support system.
I love it, Tricia. Thanks so much for being on today. I assume, why don't you let folks know if they want to know more about you or Belay, where they should go online?
Yes, you can find us at belaysolutions.com. You'll find more information on our different services on there. And the only thing I would mention is that what is unique about us as well is that we have very special matching when it comes to working with us. And so we take a lot of pride in knowing that the people that you put together a client and a VA or whatever that looks like, the match is important. And most people want to work with people they enjoy, they like, they have the skill set. And so our culture bleeds into how we match. And so we're very thorough on what that looks like for the journey for both the client and the contractor that we get the opportunity to work with. So we'd love to talk to anybody about it. You can reach us at belaysolutions.com.
Thanks. That's awesome. Thanks, Tricia. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being part of LeaderCast. We were so excited to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.